Despite the decimation of Mass Effect Andromeda, BioWare has stated they are definitely not done with Mass Effect as a franchise. However, with Anthem flip-flopping like a banked salmon and that whole thing where it literally set consoles on fire, it may not be their choice to make. EA can be famously cutthroat, and with two relative failures in a row, Andromeda and now Anthem, the future isn't clear for BioWare as a studio. Thankfully, a new Kotaku report has stated that the Mass Effect IP in particular is being warmed up, like Saturday night's curry, for future sequels, following it being put on ice back in 2017. By going back to their roots, incorporating what worked from previous releases, and introducing new features fans crave, there are many ways for BioWare to save Mass Effect without giving us another flaming shit show like Andromeda. And if they get everything right, they could come up with another genre-defining masterstroke. I am Commander Ash from WhatCulture Gaming, and this is the Mass Effect 5 wishlist. 9 things fans need to see. 9. Bring back Paragon and Renegade. Paragon and Renegade can be a little restrictive, as Mass Effect 3's ending proved. However, it is terribly unfair to judge the entire trilogy on the last 10 minutes, and the Paragon or Renegade option has been a fundamental building block of what made the trilogy great. Andromeda eschewed this classic system for a more personality-based dialogue wheel. This brought the game more in line with Dragon Age, but Mass Effect lost a bit of its identity in the process. Replacing them seemed highly unnecessary in the first place, but the fact all we got in return was the same idea watered down just feels redundant. Plus, this move meant that the instant response options, like headbutting reporters or letting Garrus win the shootout, were lost. It's obviously harder to build a distinct personality when your options are good or bad, but being throwaway sarcastic one moment and logical and heartfelt the next really isn't the basis for a character's personality, and we need a definitive step forward. 8. Pre-Shepard. One way to shake off the, spectre of Shepard hanging over the game is to blast off into another galaxy, as Andromeda tried to do. However, when two of Shepard's optional endings fundamentally change life as we know it, it's still a little difficult to get away from that. Another way to make sure Shepard and their decisions have no bearing on the game whatsoever is to go backwards. By setting the game before Shepard was even born, BioWare affords themselves a relatively clean slate. The First Contact war against Centurions is a possibility, and it's definitely fertile ground. Especially if instead of saving the galaxy, this time around all you have to do is make sure you and your buddies survive. The drawbacks to this approach come from limiting the amount of races that could be involved, and it means you'll likely spend the majority of your time interacting with other humans. Boo, nobody likes that. This somewhat undercuts Mass Effect's unique selling point, the whole space exploration thing. However, there are plenty of options between the First Contact War and Mass Effect 1, and it isn't until the third game where the Reapers started to affect the majority of the population. 7. A relatable crew. The crew of the Tempest were okay, but compared to the likes of Liara, Garrus, Joker, Edie, Miranda, Jack, and the list could go on a good while yet, they just fade into the background. PB and Drac were the biggest culprits, but they set up Cora for a bitter, overlooked deputy arc that never materialised too. Suvi could have been competition with Joker if the game actually included her without you expressly needing to speak to her after every mission. And why they got a star like Natalie Dormer to then give her a bit part is anyone's guess. The movie night Liam arranged in Andromeda was decent, but was obviously BioWare clutching at the amazing Citadel DLC from Mass Effect 3. If the next game wants to forge a connection between the player and other characters, it needs to take risks and be its own thing as much as it does take inspiration from what has gone before. Not just be a full copycat. 6. Actually include the Quarians. This one's an absolute no-brainer, and frankly, if it doesn't happen, the game probably deserves to fail. The Quarians were absent in Andromeda, likely being saved for a DLC which will now never arrive. Mass Effect 4, or 5, or whatever you want to title it, needs to make them front and centre once again. Tali is one of the most popular characters in the original trilogy, with her Mass Effect 2 loyalty mission, Treason, still one of the best side quests in gaming to this day. The Quarians had a complex and at times overwhelming tale with their creation of the Geth as well. We've explored the Quarians and the Geth on the large scale, influencing the war and discovering the history, whilst trying to maintain friendships and loyalties with Tali and Legion. However, after the trilogy went increasingly blockbuster, perhaps something smaller scale could be next. If the next Mass Effect is a prequel, it could deal with much earlier parts of the conflict, before the Quarians and the Geth were enemies. It's possible they might even be able to remove their helmets at times to allow us to see their real faces. But keeping that mystery is still good fun too. However BioWare handles it, the Quarians simply have to be there. 5. Meaningful choices. The ABC ending the trilogy offered us has already been covered. And yes, cynics can make the argument that your choices ultimately counted for naught, but to do so ignores the emotional weight these decisions had as we played through them. The final choices might have been a bit pared down, but some of the ones through the story left you with your heart in your stomach. Saving or eliminating the Rachni literally gave you the choice of a species survival. Likewise, the game can force you to choose between Jack or Miranda and Tali or Legion, depending on your Paragon renegade charisma. These would be massive choices in other games, but in Mass Effect they're just par for the course. Mass Effect 3 gives you the option between curing the Krogan or lying to them. But far from a simple A or B, this is a complex web of choices that can end in you shooting one of the game's most beloved characters. Mass Effect 1 even forced you into a choice between squad mates Ashley or Kaidan, with the other dying and never returning to the game again. The next game needs more of these choices which genuinely impact playthroughs. 4. New races. Mass Effect Andromeda opened up a whole new galaxy. So why exactly did we spend most of our time with humans, Asari, Krogans and Turians? Vetra being a female hardly counts as something new. Even the supporting cast were races we'd seen before, with Solarians mostly pottering away in the background. The Ket were just bland bad guy bingo, the Remnant were Reapers, but not. So the only real newbies were the Angara. The pros and cons of the Angara don't really matter, although some fans will argue the cons outweigh the pros anyway. What matters is that in an expansive, lush galaxy for us to explore fresh, there was one new race, a by-the-numbers villain, and yet more bad machines. If the circumstances of the game means it's unrealistic to include new races, setting everything in the past for example, the whole Dren and Hanar history point becomes all the more important. Yes, Quarians need to be there and other major races too, but the other minor races need some of the spotlight. Of course, there is a straightforward way to ensure certain races get more of a look in, and that is 3. Focus on the Drell-Hanar relationship. This one might seem a little strange at first, but it's essentially symbolic for all of the minor bits and pieces of lore that the original trilogy introduced. Andromeda sort of brought their own ideas to the table, but with such a flat villain, a constant and tiresome sense of panic, and much thinner game, it just didn't bring the goods. The Hanar have become something of cult figures amongst the Mass Effect fanbase, largely down to the exploits of Blasto, a Hanar from Mass Effect 3 who went on to get his own comic. The Drell are popular almost entirely off the back of terminally ill assassin Thane Krios, with only 3 named Drell actually appearing in the series. The two races live together on the same planet, but without any major Hanar, and Thane being very wrapped up in his own story, this angle never really got dug into. With high quality writing, it could prove to be a very deep well. It wouldn't need to necessarily be this of course, but Andromeda was very thin on the ground when it came to exploring deeper lore of the species. Elcor, Batarian, possibly even pre-Genophage Krogan, there is a lot of things in the Mass Effect universe left to explore. 2. Keep Andromeda's mechanics. For as much as the new dialogue options revamp felt like a downgrade, tweaks to Mass Effect's combat and power system were rightly met with praise. If only one part of Andromeda's style remains in the mix for Mass Effect 5, it has to be this. Though some would like to see class builds abandoned completely for a more fully customizable power wheel, like in Skyrim for example, classes form another crucial part of Mass Effect's identity, and help when it comes to balancing squads. Allowing you to change as many times as you saw fit for a credit reduction in Andromeda felt like the perfect compromise. Keeping that going forward seems like the most sensible course of action. Not only that, but while no one had any real problems with the original trilogy's gunplay, especially in the second and third installments, it's a little dated given the industry's focus on shooters recently. Andromeda was the closest the power wheel got to seamless. Anthem's one saving grace is that it's pretty fun in the moment to fly around in the javelins, even if everything feels hollow underneath. Implementing this fun into a more substantial Mass Effect experience would get BioWare back on track. 1. Playable races. Playable races is a feature Mass Effect fans have wanted for a very, very long time. Dragon Age already pulls this off, allowing you to be an elf, a dwarf, or a Qunari, as well as a standard human, so BioWare could hopefully transfer the feature across. Humans aren't particularly well liked across the galaxy, with more respect offered to Turians and Asari. However, a Solarian dealing with a Krogan, or vice versa, would be a lot more tense, whilst being one of the minor races would ensure we'd see the world through their eyes. How do the Hanar feel towards the Quarians? It's a question a new Mass Effect could answer. The logistics of actually playing as a Hanar, Volus or Elcor are probably too difficult to implement, but humanoid races shouldn't pose too much of an issue. There's always a possibility of these other races being a part of your crew too. Mass Effect has always been a game that's designed to be shaped by you and the decisions you make. Experiencing the galaxy as a fresh-faced Asari would make for a happy change from another go-around as a hotshot human. And that's our list. What do you most want to see in a new Mass Effect? Share your thoughts in the comments section below. I've been Ash and this has been WhatCulture Gaming. Make sure to subscribe to the WhatCulture YouTube channel for more lists like this. And don't forget to visit whatculture.com for daily news and articles. Thanks for watching.